Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, co-editor-in-chief of Retail Insider. Joining me today is Bruce Winder, who is a retail analyst and author. Thanks for joining us today, Bruce.
Thanks for having me on, Mario.
Hello. Let's talk about the war in Iran and the Middle East and that conflict. How could that affect oil prices and what would that mean for consumers when, with higher uh, fuel costs, inflation?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting and big development this week, last week. The biggest impact is going to be, as you mentioned, on oil prices. There is some natural gas that goes through there too, but mostly oil prices through the state, the Strait of Hormuz. And that's really slowed things down for obvious reasons. So what that means is that oil prices, if this issue continues, this war continues for a prolonged period, you're going to see elevated prices of oil, and that's going to trickle down to supply chain costs for retailers and manufacturers and importers. And that's going to trickle down potentially to retail inflation on shelf. The other side to this, though, is that as gas prices go up at the pump, more of consumers' disposable income will be eaten up by higher gas prices, which means that they won't have as much disposable income to buy other non-essential items, discretionary items. We've also seen food go up a bit too, so it's getting harder for a number of folks. So it's not going to help the retail industry on two fronts. One is the cost of goods. The other is really, consumer sentiment and consumer budgets. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
I can you talk a little bit about that and and uncertainty? And it's funny because I just the other day talked to an economist about this, and he was talking about uncertainty and what that does for business and business investment, etc., and consumers. But aren't we living in a world now that it just seems it's uncertain all the time? We've got tariffs, we got war, we've had COVID, isn't this just the reality now?
You're right. I mean, the last 6 years have been brutal in terms of, what we would call black swan events or, one-time issues. And that certainly, when I look at it this way, uncertainty is kryptonite to business. It really is, because you can't plan. And this isn't happening in isolation. Like the war isn't happening in isolation. You've got the consistent changing of world trade and tariffs from the U.S. administration. And that affects global trade, obviously. That if you're a business now, it's very difficult to plan your business in the future. It's very difficult to manage your margins, to buy inventory, to set pricing. And you're nervous about hiring folks and you're nervous about spending a lot of capital in many cases. So, these things have negative knock-on effects for the country. Businesses might not hire as much. We've seen a bit of an elevation in unemployment. They might not spend as much, right? Consumers are nervous. Some stock markets have been hit,
Yeah.
right? So consumers might see some of their savings dwindle a little bit because of this, which adds up to them being a little more cautious at retailers.
So what do retailers have to do when they're hit with times like these?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think what retailers are doing is they're trying to manage their own costs to make sure they can maybe absorb some of the increases in price due to oil because, the consumer is not really in a place to take on a lot of inflation right now, right? Especially for price elastic items. I think what retailers are doing too is looking more at private label. There's been a bit of a gravitation toward private label. There's been store brands. There's been a gravitation towards promotional mix as well. So I think retailers are sort of looking at that, probably saying, you know what, we may have to sharpen some promotions. We may have to, make sure we buy a little more inventory of private label to try to help the consumer kind of weather through this.
Now, when you look at the different sectors and sort of the retail umbrella, are there certain ones that are more vulnerable at times like this from geopolitical shocks?
Yeah, I mean, one can say that anyone who imports products has long supply chains, which is everybody now. is going to feel some of the pain. I think value retailers will do pretty well. If you're No Frills or Maxi or your Dollarama, you're probably going to do well because of this, because people are sharpening their pencil and tightening their belt. If you're in the middle of retail, it might be a little tougher for you. Even some of the semi-luxury products brands may have a little bit of a tough time as aspirational shoppers start to sort of dial back. So it does affect retail differently, certainly depending on your supply chains, your price points, your brand strategy, and how you're positioned within the economy.
Yeah. When you look at sort of into the future, what are the key indicators, I guess, retailers and consumers should look at to understand, what all this is going to mean for the retail market?
I think a lot of folks are looking at GDP, gross domestic product. Is our economy expanding? It contracted a little bit late last year. So we're looking for that growth. We're looking for lower unemployment too. The other thing that retailers are dealing with, in a perfect storm, is slowing populations. So our population is anticipated to be flat this year. Retailers enjoyed significant growth in population over the last few years, but that's slowed down now. But I think they're going to be looking at unemployment. They're going to be looking at GDP growth, and to some degree, stock markets. If you're in the stock market, our real estate market has taken a bit of a hit too. If you own real estate, you've probably seen a decline in the value. The upside is that rents are going down a little bit, in some markets, so that helps the consumer free up some disposable income. But sort of consumer sentiment, business spending, business sentiment. And of course, we take our lead from the government, right? The federal government, provincial governments, how they're managing their policy development. I know that, Prime Minister Carney's been pretty aggressive about signing new deals around the world with different partners. So, the big question is, will that be enough to offset, a potential issue as it relates to CUSMA, the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, which will be negotiated, hopefully renegotiated with the US over the next little while.
Yeah. Right. Thanks, Bruce, for joining us today.
Thanks, Mario.
Okay, that was Bruce Winder, a retail analyst and author. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, co-editor in chief of Retail Insider. Thanks for joining us today.